is that as-of-right development must include 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever that number is, must be affordable. It's a really simple thing. If you build a building with 400 units, 80 units should be affordable, whatever those numbers are, because there's different categories. Instead of creating a system that doesn't really work. So, as I said, the system has now been in place for 2 years. A single rezoning has occurred, and the entire community was against it because it didn't actually respond to the people in the district. This is East New York, where the average family income is under $30,000 a year for a family of 4. And the affordable housing was going to be available to families making up to $110,000. So how are these folks going to compete with the other people in this lottery? And what it was a sneaky form of gentrification into that community. So the most important thing is to come up with a system that forces developers to build affordable housing as of right, rather than create incentives that will just create more density, more luxury development, and for every 300 units, yes, 30 units or 50 units of these rezoned areas will get it. But compared to the luxury condominiums and all the luxury development, we will be further and further and further behind throughout the entire city. So that's my proposal, and it's pretty radical to the people who control this city, but if I get elected, believe me, it's going to be a problem for them. So that's what I have to say.
저는 이것 또한 토지 용도 정책의 문제라고 생각하는데요. 현재 시정부에서 새로 나온 정책은 2014년부터 2016년도까지 이 저소득층 아파트 문제에 대해서 새로운 정책을 했고 많은 노력을 하고 있습니다. 다만 문제는 이 정책이 부동산 개발업자들에 의해서 만들어진 정책이기 때문에 실제로 저소득층 아파트가 필요한 사람들한테 수요가 충분히 가지 못하고 있습니다. 그래서 제가 당선이 된다면 이렇게 부동산 개발업자들이 저소득층 아파트를 좀 더 만들수록 더 호화롭고 고밀도 주택을 지을 수 있는 정책이 아니라 아예 처음부터 어느 특정한 개수의 저소득층 아파트를 만들고 보장해야 하는 그런 새로운 시스템을 구축할 것을 저는 약속드립니다.
So we'll be taking a couple of questions from the audience now. We'll begin here and then here.
Hello, my name is Sarah Kim. As you have stated, the Flushing, and I would also want to include Bayside area as well, have been overdeveloped, and they're suffering from overdevelopment, congestion, trash pile-up, right? You have said that. How did this happen, right? And what are you going to do about it? That's it, when you come to that.
It's easy to answer that question. How did this happen? Lack of oversight by our council member, whose sole job it is to provide oversight of these massive developments that impede our quality of life. Our council member ranks as one of the worst performing council members according to City and State, precisely because he did not provide any of this oversight. It's a free market enterprise. When it's unchecked and unbalanced by the people that we elect to hold people accountable, development will run rampant. It's simply lack of oversight. That's the reason. And your second part of the question is how we would address it. Paying attention, not focus on running your side business of pharmacy chain stores, devoting 100% of your time to the job that taxpayers pay you to do. Focus 100% of your energy on what it means to be our council member, who is our most local elected official, who should be accountable for addressing constituent cases, passing sensible legislation that helps better the community members' lives.
플러싱이나 베이사이드의 교통체증 그리고 쓰레기가 제때 치워지지 않는 사태가 왜 벌어졌냐고 물어보신다면 현직 시의원들이 제대로 감사를 안 하고 있기 때문이라고 생각합니다. 시의원에 사실 그게 감사를 하는 게 시의원에 있는데 지금 현직 의원들은 파트타임으로 일하고 있기 때문에 본인들의 시간이나 정성을 100% 쏟고 있지 않아서 이렇게 무능력한 사태가 발생했다고 생각합니다.
So what she gonna do about it?
You talked about focus.
So 100%. I'm sorry, I may not have remembered everything.
I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. My background is land use, and I have rezoned 85% of the 19th Council District, and again, 50% of the 20th Council District. I actually live about a 6-minute walk from here. I live at 32nd Avenue and 146th Street. It's very close by, okay? I am in an R2A zone, which again, I created. I helped to co-author that with State Senator Tony Avella, who, by the way, has endorsed me for this race, just for everybody to know. This zone is an anti-McMansion zone. We rezoned College Point, Whitestone, North Flushing, Auburndale, Douglaston, Little Neck, Bayside, Casino Park, Waldheim, Fresh Meadows, Glen Oaks, Belrose, Holliswood. I can continue going on. We did this between 2004 and 2013. All of these rezonings were done. The one place I was not allowed to do this in, and again, this was as a volunteer, this was as an activist and a professional. The one place I was not allowed to do this was downtown Flushing. Now, as I said, what we did in Bayside, for example, removed 40 blocks that were zoned multifamily and changed the zoning to single family. We saved over 1,000 single family homes by doing this. We rezoned other areas to protect the 2-family quality. We actually rezoned areas for growth. For example, College Point Boulevard and Bell Boulevard were upzoned, Northern Boulevard slightly upzoned, to allow for more development in very specific areas that make sense. That's what planning is supposed to be about. And unfortunately, we're dealing with a map that's 55 years old, that was created by Robert Moses, and many of you may have heard of him. He's the guy that essentially created the mess that we live in today in New York City. All the highways, all the public housing, all of the development. And I have been trying to fix his map for almost 25 years. Downtown Flushing was zoned for massive development. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started reacting to this, because again, when you're a kid, how are you supposed to react to these things? Okay? So basically my entire adult life, I have been trying to help not only the outlying communities from downtown Flushing, but even areas within downtown Flushing where illegal development has occurred, where someone got an approval for a 10-story building and tried to build a 14-story building, for example. Hello? Oh, there we go. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo here. So my point is, Allison comes at this from a real estate perspective, which I admire because it's very complicated. I come at this from a land use perspective, which deals with the real estate perspective, but takes it in a slightly different direction. And again, I don't work for developers. I'm one of the few urban planners who do not work for developers. I work for the community, and that's what I've been doing, and that's what I will continue to do.
저는 19 지역구의 85% 그리고 20 지역구의 50% 이상의 토지 용도 변경을 제가 주도했고, 그래서 제가 지금 살고 있는 지역도 대형 주택 개발이 될 수 없는 용도로 토지 용도를 변경을 했습니다. 이런 식으로 규제를 굉장히 많은 지역에서 했는데 다운타운 플러싱에서만 할 수가 없었고요. 그 이유는 다운타운 플러싱은 토지 용도가 대형 개발을 목적으로 되어 있기 때문입니다. 물론 퀸즈 전역의 대형 개발이 필요한 지역이 몇 군데 있지만 그 굉장히 구체적이고 국한되어 있는 지역들이고 그런 지역에 한해서만 개발이 가능해야 된다고 생각하고 그것이 도시 계획이라고 생각하는데 현직 의원들은 지금 55년도 넘은 지도에 기반해서 주택 정책을 계속 만들고 있기 때문에 그것을 바꿔야 된다고 생각합니다. 제가 거의 유일한 뉴욕시 도시 기획자 중에 부동산 개발업자들을 위해 일하지 않는 그 커뮤니티의 주민들을 위해 일하는 도시 계획자라고 자부합니다.
Your urban planners are really the one a lot of work, but we are, as a Korean American, we want to know what is you do for so far.
Okay, I can. Hello. I can give 3 examples for you. The first is probably the farthest back, which is almost 15 or 14 years ago. There's a church on the corner of 170th Street and Northern Boulevard called the Manna Presbyterian Church. The Manna Presbyterian Church had a huge problem. They had a lot of problems, actually. They had a problem with their own congregation, and they also had a problem with the surrounding community. And they were very much, there was a tremendous amount of tension. They did all kinds of illegal things with their building. They had stop work orders. The building was going to collapse. All kinds of things happened. And they were not very communicative with their neighbors, which was a very multi-ethnic, diverse community. So myself, a friend of mine who's an architect, and then Councilman Avella brought the 2 groups together and helped them resolve their problem. And this was really a first between a Korean congregation and the larger community. This was a very, very big deal for this to happen. Ultimately, they built a beautiful church that fits in with the neighborhood, with enough parking, with nice landscaping, and they became good friends with their neighbors. So that's issue number 1. And that was, again, 13, 14 years ago at this point. The second was I was deeply involved fighting the Flushing Commons project, which again, Allison's opponent endorsed and voted for and pushed through. The original plan for the downtown Flushing parking lot was to build an actual park surrounded by lower buildings to create a real center for the community. And the former councilwoman who recently died, Councilwoman Julia Harrison, was the proposer of this, and it was for many, many years they were pushing for this. The new plan was brought forward by a very big developer, and I worked and created a coalition of over 10,000 people, including the Union Street Merchants Association, which, in my opinion, and I think for many Koreans, is considered the center of the Korean community, at least the business community, or the birthplace of the Korean community for the business community. And we fought for over a year trying to change this plan. We managed to get 17 major pieces of this put into the plan that would help both the Korean Merchants Association, the Union Street Merchants Association, and the greater community. Every single one of these stipulations, as we called them, was stripped by the council member and by the council and the mayor. But we fought really hard to try to do that. The third thing is very recent, and that has to do with the new KCS building, which is 204th Street and 32nd Avenue in Bayside. 2 years ago, my opponent announced that in the newspaper, without ever having a press conference, that there was going to be a new 800-student high school built on what was the former Bayside Jewish Center, which is now KCS. What most people don't know is that KCS was negotiating to buy that property, and the councilman tried to stop them from buying this property by putting and proposing an 800-student high school 3 blocks away from another high school, Bayside High School. Myself, State Senator Tony Avella, the surrounding civic associations, the neighbors, fought against this. The Community Board 11, we organized. We fought this for 6 months. The school's construction authority lied to the community, they lied to the community board, the councilman lied to the community and the community board. The entire thing went forward until the community board met in November. We got over 4,000 letters sent to the councilman. He refused to change his position. At Community Board 11, 300 and something people showed up. The vote was 35-1 against. Half an hour after the vote, the councilman put out a press release saying, "I am now against the school." However, he then, for the next 3 weeks, tried to say he was against the school, but the school was still going to get built. And this went on for several more weeks. We continued to have rallies outside of his office. 3 weeks later, the school's construction authority, for the first time in their history, ended a contract that they had already signed. And it was because of the community board, State Senator Tony Avella, civic leaders, and myself. The councilperson is now claiming that he's the person that brought KCS to this site. He forced them to pay an extra $3 million to purchase that property because the school's construction authority raised the sale price of that property. Had they purchased it prior, it would have been about $4.5 million. They ended up buying it for $7.5 million. And now they're going to him, asking him for money. So this should tell you something right now. You've got a councilman who's a compulsive liar, who has not helped the Korean community, and who has actually actively worked against the Korean community. So I just want to throw that out there as someone, again, I've never asked for a dime for anything that I've done. I've done this because the Korean community is part of the entire community. And if you're going to be a council person and you're going to be an elected official, you have to represent everyone. Thank you.
한인사회를 위해서 제가 한 일을 세 가지로 요약해서 말씀드릴 수가 있는데요. 첫 번째로 만나교회에서 새 건물을 개조할 때 불법 개조 등의 많은 문제가 있었습니다. 그걸 통해서 법적인 문제뿐만 아니라 지역 주민들의 반발과 소통의 부재로 굉장히 텐션이 많았는데요. 그때 당시 시의원이었던 토니 아벨라 의원과 제가 같이 중재를 해서 개조를 다시 제대로 할 수 있게 도와줬고, 그리고 지역 사회와 원만한 소통이 이루어질 수 있도록 중재하는 역할이 있었습니다. 두 번째로 수아신 커먼스 프로젝트가 처음에 프로포즈가 됐을 때 당시에는 처음 아이디어와 다르게 대형 개발이 이루어져서 소상공인들에게 큰 위험이 갈 수 있었는데요. 그때 당시 저는 만여 명이 넘는 연대를 이끌었고, 그중에는 유니언 스트리트 상인 번영회도 포함이 되어 있었습니다. 저희가 함께 일해서 대형 개발을 막을 수가 있었고, 저희는 시장 그리고 시의회까지 가서 제대로 된 정책을 수립하려고 했지만, 비록 실패는 했지만 당시 한인 소상공인들과 함께 뜻을 했고 함께 일한 경력이 있고요. 그리고 가장 최근으로서는 KCS가 새로 들어가려고 하는 건물에 대해서 그 건물 입주를 도왔습니다. 당시에 제 경쟁자인 시의원이 아무 기자회견도 없이 급작스럽게 그 KCS가 입주하려는 건물을 800명 규모의 하이스쿨로 지정을 하겠다는 발표를 급작스럽게 했고요. 하지만 그 학교는 다른 하이스쿨에서 3블럭 정도밖에 떨어져 있지 않았습니다. 그래서 KCS가 입주하기에 굉장히 곤란했고, 지역 주민들의 반발도 거셌고, 제가 주도해서 그 다음 커뮤니티 보드 미팅이 있었을 때 약 300명의 지역 주민들이 찾아왔고, 그래서 커뮤니티 보드는 그 새로운 학교를 개설하는 것에 반대하는 표를 던졌습니다. 그런 일이 있고 나서 30분도 안 지나서 그 시의원께서는 기자회견을 통해 본인은 더 이상 학교 건설을 지지하지 않는다는 발표를 했지만, 그 이후로도 수주 동안 본인 입장을 명확히 하지 않으면서 지역 주민들을 굉장히 당혹스럽게 만들었고요. 그 결과적으로는 그런 일이 있었기 때문에 원래 매매하려던 건물 가격보다 훨씬 높은 가격에 KCS가 건물을 구매할 수밖에 없었고, 그래서 현재 그럼에도 KCS가 그 의원한테 지원금을 요청을 하는데 본인은 한인사회가 그 의원이 오히려 더 반대 입장을 취했었다는 것을 말하고 싶다고 하고, 그리고 한인사회는 우리 모두의 사회의 일원이기 때문에 본인이 당선이 된다면 플러싱을 대표할 것이고 그것에는 한인 사회를 대표하는 것도 포함이 되어 있다고 말씀하셨습니다.
I believe the question from
Yeah.
Ellen was what your contribution to the Korean American community is from the land use perspective. I want to answer from the perspective of a proud mother of two beautiful Korean Chinese girls that will be growing up here. I am also the proud daughter of two hardworking, incredibly loving Korean American parents who have immigrated to this country and sacrificed everything so that me and my husband and their grandchildren can have a better life. Flushing is an incredibly diverse district. The largest demographics are represented by the Chinese American community and the Korean American community. Together, we are the Asian American coalition of this district. Flushing is the epicenter of Asian American empowerment. With so few Asian American electeds represented in our city council, 2 seats available, one in Chinatown and one here in Flushing. Every seat has to be utilized to its fullest potential to elevate and assert a strong Asian American voice. These, to the community at large, whether you are Chinese or whether you are Korean American, we are looked upon the same. The reality is, our cultures, our heritage, one that is founded on integrity, hard work, filial piety, one that pays attention to our seniors and devotes all of our resources to educating our children. It's the same. And that is the voice. That is the Asian American voice that I can help our community collectively articulate in City Council.